From our point of view, this is still only the second ending of the 9-ending game. Everything we see from the money we spend is about the multiplier. For every dollar spent on those chips by Tim Simpson, the end quote, godfather of AI, end quote, $8 to $10 are added to the rest of tech. That and hashtag 039, why I still think tech stocks will be up 25% by next year, and it and hashtag 039, only 10 p.m. at this AI party that goes until 4 a.m. I recently said that I thought the keynote speech would set a new all-time high for Nvidia if I could. Mark the box. I reached a new high point. I and hashtag 039 am not giving myself a pat on the back. Because do you know what? Not following through. History. That and hashtag 039, That and hashtag 039, right. I didn't and hashtag 039, give you a pat on the back. So, when he goes to CES last year and gives his speech, the stock goes up. It stays up for 2 more days and then goes up even more. So you could kind of tell that the stock was going to go up. It went to the event, but it didn't and hashtag 039, stay. You didn't and hashtag 039, follow through, you didn't and hashtag 039, stay there. Let and hashtag 039, go over that again and talk about how I think the watchers should handle or change the risk of yesterday and hashtag 039, move. Very rarely does a stock hit an all-time high during the day and then close to the 50-day moving average. It and hashtag 039, not okay to ignore that. That means something. I think that, there and hashtag 039, also the fact that Nvidia and hashtag 039, stock has been turned into a game, even though the company has strong foundations. Since a lot of these ETFs are double leveraged and computers are involved, I think that a lot of what you saw yesterday was caused by that. So, if you want to buy at 150 or close to those intraday highs, you need to look at where the price is now and figure out the trend. In the next few days is down. Yes, I know that and hashtag 039, not what most people say because they say and quote, okay, and Jim Cramer and hashtag 039, right, and quote, a lot of people trade around Nvidia, but if you own it as a core position, Don and hashtag 039, trade around it. There are many tactical aspects to Nvidia, and let and hashtag 039, just say that what I thought would happen did not happen. Now the momentum has been rolled over, and you have negative momentum in the short term. However, this doesn't and hashtag 039, change the fact that this company has strong fundamentals for the long term, and you should buy it because you think it will reach a new all-time high at some point in the future. For many years, CES was the place to be each year. After that, it kind of went away from me. This year, though, the Super Bowl, the World Cup, and the World Series are all happening at the same time. That and hashtag 039, why you need someone who knows what and hashtag 039, going on. We and hashtag 039, lucky that we have that person. I and hashtag 039, like to bring in Beth Kendig, who is the lead tech expert for IO Fund. Beth, I and hashtag 039, am sure you were happy this week. We need to begin with Jensen Young, correct? Listen, he was the most important thing in the world. He and hashtag 039, changing the market. It felt like a blitz when I was listening to his talk. I and hashtag 039, am not very knowledgeable about this subject, so I and hashtag 039, am still trying to understand a lot of it. It seems like he and hashtag 039, after everything, and the company wants to control everything. Yesterday, the stock started a little higher but then took a beating. What and hashtag 039, going on? It and hashtag 039, great to see you, Charles. I really enjoy the dip times in Nvidia. I love it when I can buy something on a deal. While at CES, some very important statements were made. I and hashtag 039, point to the personal AI machine they talked about. To give you an idea, they will be able to handle AI models with up to 200 billion factors for about $3,000. Qualcomm and hashtag 039, $1,000 AI PC can handle a 13 billion input right now. We and hashtag 039, talking about 15 times bigger models. This is huge because a lot of investors are worried that big tech companies aren't and hashtag 039, making enough money because they don't and hashtag 039, have those big, flashy apps that bring in all the money. Along with developers being able to support AI from the developer side, this makes it easier for people to use more AI apps. That really was a big news. Starting this week. What about the robots? I and hashtag 039 am really excited about the robots. I think the words Nvidia and robots should be used together more often. This is because I and hashtag 039 always thought that when it comes to self-driving cars, Nvidia, which is the biggest robotics and modeling company, would be ahead of a company like Tesla. And there was a big argument about that a long time ago, Tesla. Everyone who is an investor should stand up and take notice right now. Nvidia is not only the link between AI data centers, they will be what all self-driving cars have in common. A second interesting and exciting event was Microsoft and hashtag 039's announcement that they would spend $80 billion. He just talked about what Wall Street was complaining about. One of the main complaints for the whole year was that these Z-scalers couldn't and hashtag 039 keep it up, which is why all the experts on Wall Street told people to get out of the winners and find a good growth or value stock. That and hashtag 039's really amazing news. Tell us about how much desire there is for Blackwell and these other chips. Charles, pay close attention to those big tech investment numbers. They and hashtag 039 telling you something very important. Demand will still be there in 2025. Even more important from last week, maybe. Jensen Huang said Blackwell would be ready on time and that it was being tested and put into production at all cloud service providers. Those sound great to investors. For 2 years, Nvidia has been at the top of this market, which has been a record bull market. Nvidia needs to show up on time. They say they and hashtag 039 be there on time. We and hashtag 039 getting proof that Microsoft and a lot of other companies are ready to spend. That makes 2025 a great year for AI. Beth, a lot of the names changed on this. I think Jensen presented a lot of the smaller names during these presentations. Like Aurora Innovations, which is one of them. It seems likely that these big names will finally take over and own everything in all of these new areas. What about investors? Is there room for some of these smaller names to come up and really get a piece of the action? Yes, very much so, especially when we look at Nvidia. We now have these big tech investment numbers. We know that Blackwell will be on time. The AI networking stack is what my company is really paying close attention to. Basically, you need to understand that AI models are causing a huge rise in the amount of computing power needed. In other words, it and hashtag 039's getting too big for the current network. What you see as the current network needs to be changed. We also know exactly when it needs to be fixed. That and hashtag 039's when Blackwell shows up. We think that a lot of the small companies that make parts for AI networking will really hit it out of the park this year. The hype phase of this is over. Now, by the way, you should see all the notes I and hashtag 039 taken while you and hashtag 039 been talking. Then what should we look forward to next? I mean, are there clear winners and losers from this? I and hashtag 039 show you what I mean. AMD, you can always hope that they and hashtag 039 get it together. That being said, AMD has done really well given that Intel used to eat their lunch every day. A lot of people are cheering for the CEO, but the stock is having a hard time. I think it lost some points today. Are there clear winners and losers right now in AMD and Taiwan Semi? You ask some great questions. Because of how they and hashtag 039 replanning their products, Nvidia will be the winner in 2025. AI systems are going from 8 GPUs to 36 GPUs to 72 GPUs. These other players, like Broadcom with custom silicon or AMD with custom silicon, can and hashtag 039T keep up. If things keep going like this, Charles, keep in mind that Nvidia and hashtag 039's price power, which is almost too much, will be tested, and that and hashtag 039's when AMD and hashtag 039's time will come. So give AMD that much time. I would say 2026 or 2027. I would not give up on AMD. But having said that, this is Nvidia and hashtag 039's market right now, and it always has been. So, I still think Nvidia is in the lead because I can see clearly, because everyone is telling us that Nvidia will continue to lead in both income and sales. Yes, I was going to ask you. Based on what you read and saw on video this week, the price of CES has been very interesting. As Jensen Huang says, the stock had already gone up, then went up a little more, and then fell apart yesterday. It and hashtag 039's down a little today, but it and hashtag 039's still down more than 3% for the week. Yes, I sold half of my position a while ago. But if you listen to what Jensen said, it sounds like he and hashtag 039's giving you a playbook of names to own and areas not to own. And at the start, you and Sima talked about ideas for quantum computers. But Micron sounds like it will be a winner. Lots and lots of robots. It and hashtag 039's like there are several businesses, but I only own Tesla. Because of this, Nvidia is the company that tells you what and hashtag 039's going on in the AI area. So I don't and hashtag 039T think Nvidia is too old at all. I just think it makes the markets rough. They won and hashtag 039T know how much money they made until the end of February. So there and hashtag 039's not much to be really excited about. That and hashtag 039's why I think 150 is still the cap. That pattern will end sometime this year, though, because I think we and hashtag 039LL demand growth in sales and earnings, which is what we and hashtag 039V done the last 2 years. This will cause the price to rise.